So we will get started with today's session. First of all, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, accompanying us in this last seminar of this series about the Venezuelan exodus. We will be speaking today specifically about the journey of the Venezuelan migrants on their journey towards the north. Next slide, please. My name is Monica Pozzi, and I work as a translator, and I'm also part of the communications team of the Service Providers for Health for Migrants, which is a great organization devoted to health justice. And that thanks to them and to many of the people who support us with their donations, we are able to be here today, bringing you these relevant topics like this one. Migration from Venezuela is now knocking on our doors here in this country. We have it in all the news. So thanks to organizations like ours, we can bring topics like this for the health suppliers. Next slide, please. And well, before we delve in the matter, for those people who prefer to listen the presentation in English, you can go ahead and do it. You just need to move to the toolbar on Zoom. You will see an icon that has the shape of a globe. Click on it. And afterwards, you will see English. Click on it, and you will be able to hear the presentation in your preferred language. Next slide, please. Well, as we have said in this series, the idea, as we are dealing with a political topic and discussing the different social, economic matters, it is a topic that could produce several opinions. People may interpret it in different ways. And in this seminar, we want to have an inclusive environment where everybody has the possibility of expressing their opinion. And this will be done towards the end of the presentation when we open up the session for the Q&A. So we please kindly ask you, to all the attendees, to be as respectful as possible. Do not judge others, so that we're able to have this environment in order to hear every voice with all the respect possible. So we will appreciate it very much. Next slide, please. Well, before we get started, I would like to introduce Dr. Luis Sanchez. If you allow me, I will be reading his bio. Dr. Luis Sanchez obtained his medical degree as a surgeon from the University Mayor de San Andrés, Bolivia. He also has a master's degree in clinical pharmacology in primary health care from the Mario Negri Institute of Pharmacological Research in Milan, Italy. Dr. Sanchez holds a master's degree in public health and epidemiology from the Universidad Mayor de San Andrés, Bolivia. He currently serves as a professor at the Da Vinci University in Guatemala, and he is a secretary or minister of the Observatory of Tuberculosis in the same country. He also works as faculty and training consultant for MCN. Dr. Sanchez is the focal point of the TB Coalition of the Americas and the Global TB Caucus for the Latin America and the Caribbean. He has authored multiple publications on tuberculosis and has participated in the development plan of the National Strategy of Guatemala, as well as handouts of standards and procedures in tuberculosis and leishmaniasis. So we have a speaker who knows pretty well his topic. Okay. So before I give the floor to Dr. Sanchez, I would like to share with you the objectives of our learnings for today. As you all know, as attendees at the end of the presentation, will be able to identify the characteristics of Venezuelan migration in transit through the countries of Northern Triangle and Mexico, as well as their vulnerabilities and the risk situations to which they are exposed. As you know, we covered the topic from the historical point of view first, then we moved a little bit more to understanding Venezuelan migration towards the Southern Cone. We spoke about the circular migration and how these receiving countries have turned into expelling countries, which had somehow brought migration towards the north, or being one of the reasons. So today, we will cover this final part towards the US. That's why we have this first objective. You will also be able to identify the health conditions that is so important for these providers, health providers we have here, in which Venezuelan migrants arrive at the border according to the health network's cases. Finally, to identify some governmental strategies that would improve the current infrastructure of transit and host countries in order to be able to respond to the needs of migrants. So with no further ado, I now give the floor to Dr. Sanchez. Thank you very much. Thank you for introducing me. Thank you for inviting me, for having me. I feel very happy to be in this webinar. And well, maybe to get started with this topic, we need to have some empathy with all the Venezuelan citizens who make the decision of leaving their beautiful country and go after the American dream or other alternatives. You have my solidarity, all of you, because we can see how you suffer and what this means to you and your family. So to delve in this topic, we will ask ourselves, what is the reason for migrations? What does it motivate it? Not only Venezuelan migrants, but every migrant of the Northern and Southern triangles. So most of those who migrate do so for economic reasons, always fleeing poverty, seeking access to work, a better standard of living for their families, better working conditions and wages, or in more critical cases, they do it for reasons of survival. This could be extreme poverty cases. I think about the Northern Triangle countries, for example, in Guatemala, El Salvador, the southern part of Mexico. We have the maras, these gangs that extortion and murder people, and they do not allow them to develop. So people feel all this violence and they try to leave their countries because they have no answer, no response to this severe, horrible situation they are facing. Let's move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So maybe to cover a little bit more about this, what does it mean to leave Venezuela and get to the US? There's a route that normally they take, but it's important to say that it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for them to get to the border with the US if they don't face any problem. We're speaking of around 5,000 kilometers according to a direct calculation we have. Nevertheless, they never make it in 2 or 4 weeks. It takes them months, or depending on the situations they face on the road. Let's move to the next one, please. Here we can see a little bit of the diaspora of 2022. In this diaspora, we are able to see the migrant and those that were requesting asylum from Venezuela and Latin America. Most of them are in Colombia. Then we have Peru, which is another host country, receiving country with about 861,000 Venezuelans. Then we have Chile, Ecuador, the United States, and other countries with less amounts. So, well, this is a little bit about the countries that have some solidarity with them and receive the Venezuelan migrants. If we move on to the next one. Well, more than 7 million people have left Venezuela in search of protection and a better life. The majority, more than 6 million people, have found refuge in Latin America and the Caribbean countries, as I showed you in the first diaspora. So we have countries with laws in favor of migrants. And in these countries, we have those that I already mentioned. Now, we see the next slide, please. So in this 2023 diaspora, we see the amount of migrants doubles in the receiving countries. We have, for example, Colombia, 2.48 million. And in the prior year, it was 1.8. So if we notice here in this slide, we see the amount of migrants doubled. It almost went even beyond doubling last year. And I'm sure it'll be even more as year goes by and years go by. We can see that the receiving countries are basically Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, Argentina, Dominican Republic, but also to see that we have 6,100,000 migrants who became refugees in Latin America and Caribbean, but we have 7,240,000 who are in other parts of the planet, in Europe and other countries. So it is important and very impressive the amount of people who have decided to migrate because of the known reasons, in the opinion of the world. We move to the next one. So, for instance, here we see a photograph that is very impressive, the amount of people who are seeking for asylum. Like in this case, the migration from Colombia, 95,000 people have returned to Venezuela. And this is information that this can be just one day, but this information changes all the time, gradually and a long time. Let's move on to the next one. So the outflow of Venezuelan migrants is mainly due to the political, social, and economic crisis. And they have migrated throughout the continent. Colombia is by far, nevertheless, the most common destination of this diaspora, and it has the most welcoming policies in Latin America. And I think this is positive for migrants, despite of being in touch with the focal points of Colombia. And they are mentioning that the health system has now been surpassed because of the people who arrive. There are too many people, so it is not possible to take care of all of them because their capacity to respond turns really difficult in these cases. Let's move on to the next one, please. So, as part of this journey, which is very sad and unfortunate, we find what is known as the Darien jungle, Venezuelan hell. So when they get to this horrible place between Colombia and Panama, increases exponentially the risk. According to the Panamanian authorities, more than 100,000 people have taken this route since January. And there's other information, they say in the videos, and we've been able to observe, that is 1,000 people per day who go through the Darien jungle. But what happens here? If we speak about trends, the trend at the end of 2023 is estimated 400,000 people that could be going through this jungle of Darien. So it's not only Venezuelan people, but most of all, in the list of countries of the most migrants, they are from Venezuela. We also have Haiti. We have a lot of people from Haiti, Ecuador, we have China, India, and other countries from Africa, such as Somalia, Cameroon, not only Venezuela, but we have people coming from South America through this line in order to get to the US border. One of every 5 migrants, according to information that we have, are 34,000 children who went through that Darien jungle, and 900 of them with no parents. It's become a trend to send the kids alone to seek for the destination. So it is really, really unfortunate.
So there are 10 risks, much more really. But listen, some of the dangers that migrants that go through this Darien Gap suffer. Diseases, because they are going to a very unhospitable rainforest and risk to be bitten by snakes, and also many pregnant women. Also, the stress for passing through this very difficult area. Sexual violence. There have been some studies that show that about between 10 and 15% of the women that go through the Darien Gap suffer sexual violence. There are mafias. There is the Gulf, the Clan del Golfo, the Gulf Clan. It has presence in this area, and that's one of the dangers that the migrants have to face through going to this area. Also, the rivers, the powerful rivers. A couple weeks ago, we saw in the news about 6 children had drowned in those rivers. That was very, very sad. It's also, there is a recent study that shows that there is also landmines in this area, and people are exposed to be victims of these landmines. And also there is that it is the uncertainty and the possibility of being deported. And then they are going to be crossing borders, and some are friendly and some not unfriendly. Panama is a country with solidarity with Venezuelan migrants that has been told by people who have been interviewed. Thank you, Panama, for your solidarity with Venezuelan migrants. Costa Rica grant a special temporary protection category to Venezuelan migrants. And the Venezuelan government approved on October 27 the creation of the special category of complementary temporary protection that aims to provide possibilities to stay legally in the country and carry out work activities to foreigners who are denied recognition of refugee status or who are in vulnerable conditions. This measure was announced by the Costa Rica government and will benefit Venezuelan, Nicaraguan, and Cuban nationals mainly. So that's with Costa Rica. Here we can see the negative side, how Venezuelan migrants suffer abuse and harassment from Nicaraguan officials. These migration officers demand the payment of $150 and even strip migrants naked to look for that money. And I think that it is extremely irrational. That even though they refer themselves as solidarity, as with solidarity, it is not reflected in the treatment to migrants. So the arrival of Venezuelan, according to the recent studies, causes an unprecedented migration crisis in Honduras. So Honduras is also a receptor country, and the authorities in this country, in Tegucigalpa, have reported that more than 43,315 migrants from Venezuela in regular situation have entered in Central America so far through October 2022. And, Honduras charges $150 for staying 3 days in this country, more money. In some cases, if by family. There have been protests for discharging migrants at this amount. So the Catholic Church called a protest expressing the opposition for the charge of $240 for the permit for undocumented immigrants passing through Honduras in their transit to the U.S. The same amount is charged if they stayed. That's why the Catholic Church called for a rally to see if the authorities of this country will change their position. El Salvador, and very few people go through El Salvador, and we need to do a small parenthesis. Apparently, but El Salvador policies has changed. You are aware, El Salvador is now considered a safe country. People are enjoying their freedom. There are parties in the streets. You will see that in the past. The people that are part of the gangs are also in jail, and that has allowed so many people to recover their business, and then that's so that has been under Bukele's administration, and then we have to see if that has changed also with the immigration. So now, continuing with our journey, we go to Guatemala. What happens in Guatemala? The U.S. has a new order that allows 24,000 Venezuelans to enter legally by air. But those who have entered illegally into Mexico or Panama will not be eligible for that possibility. If you have your papers in order, there is a possibility for Venezuelan migrants. So let's look at the timeline. I remember this article in 2016 that was saying clearly why there was a quite a bit of, they were talking about the migration from the Northern Triangle to the U.S. And then it was saying that talking about the migration after a year and a half, the Congress approved the migration code with a human rights perspective. Migrants will be recognized as subjects of rights and will have access to healthcare, shelter, work, and education by the Guatemalan state. And that was that was just left that way. But there has been good news. So this picture is very emblematic because it really was, it surprised the Guatemalan people. It was this when the agreement of safe third country between Guatemala and the U.S. was signed in July 2019. You see here President Trump and the Guatemalan and people from and representatives from the Guatemalan countries. So the safe third country is a concept from the Geneva Conventions. There has to be also guarantees to respect of human rights as a principle on no refoulement. It is a concept that it is defined, that it is used to transfer the responsibility for examining the asylum application from the host country to another country, that it is considered safe while it's being studied, the request. So the Guatemalan processing centers as uh, since since June 2012, since June 12, 2023, there was a meeting with the representatives of the Guatemalan president with U.S. Officials to deal with the challenge of the immigration in Guatemala. So that there has been the initiative to establish centers mm, with specialists for referral to resettlements and another legal pathway such as the humanitarian parole or the family reunification. The migrants could also be referred to refugee programs in other countries like Canada and Spain. So in this meeting, it was defined the use of an ID card, the refugee ID. This document will allow refugees that are considered migrants as refugees to have an ID card, and that will allow them to enjoy the the public and private services without discrimination. This is a very important step, and then hopefully, it will be this will be implemented in the coming weeks. So these people will be able to benefit from this ID, this refugee ID. And the duration of the application process takes 3 months approximately. So I think that's very interesting. So why Guatemala is not a safe country? Guatemala, there are 3 million of inhabitants that live in extreme poverty according to UNDP 2017. And in a survey that it was done to the country, it showed that Guatemala is not in conditions to be a safer country. We have a very deplorable indicators of production, education, access to public health, and also the difficulty to provide services to people from other countries. So that's why the third safe countries has not been really implemented. So fortunately, we have this new law that will really that will really favor, that will be really favorable for migrants. So now we pass to Mexico, and we have here a picture that it is very moving. So many people. This is called the beast, the train of the death. And so many people ride on the beast, and they have illusions, and they want to go to the US and then to make their dreams go true. But the border is inaccessible. There is really a risk to that. Many people have fell from the train and had died, and there has been mutilation. Many have been mutilated. There is a hospital that really treats the people who have lost limbs, and repatriation is a fact. The humiliation in the journey, the increase of illness, and when they go back to their countries repatriated, we can say that the poverty is unrelenting because they have sold all their assets to pay for the journey to the US. That's very, very sad. But I want to do a parenthesis here and also give homage to the groups to the group of people along the railroad that support the people who are riding the train. The train is really fast, and when they are going through this train, the train they slows down the speed of the train, and they and allowing the migrants to receive the food that these people are preparing for them. And they get also, there are many volunteers, and then there are many donations of the food to prepare those meals. They were saying that the train before only adults will ride the train of the dead, but nowadays also families ride. So the patronas, these women that really support and care for the for the migrants. We hope that one day we will be able to give them a hug.
In Mexico, the amount of the refugees and immigrants is increasing, and we know this is a place where all the migrants of all Latin America get together. This is South America, Central America. So there are needs of protection because human rights are violated, definitely. There's physical violence in women and children. There's physical and mental health need because there's a lot of trauma, especially in the jungle of Darío. The food safety is something also very important because many times migrants have no food. The water services, sanitation and hygiene, safe transportation that is also needed. And the documentation, they cannot actually carry out many activities due to this. Speaking about health, refugees and migrants from Venezuela focus first on stabilizing their socioeconomic situation, and only when they have very serious or urgent cases, then they look for a health center. We know in Tabasco, Tapachula, in the south part of Mexico, there's a lack of infrastructure in the health system. It is very limited. The capacity of the health centers is limited, and then it's difficult to access. A lot of them do not have access because they just don't find them, so they self-medicate themselves. So this is important that in the host countries to show some maps so they know where the health centers or hospitals are so that they can actually go. The mental health and psychosocial support are increasing. Access to medical services and reproductive needs is also a problem and a priority. Food safety. This is also very important. They have even eaten from garbage. Along the journey, they beg, or they actually become beggars to be able to eat. In Guatemala, they have a popular eating place that takes care of migrants for free. That's okay, but it's not enough. Of course, there are many needs in food, especially children. A lot of them eat less of what they should due to lack of resources. And also COVID-19 has also affected access to food. Well, we are about to finish in time. Now, humanitarian transportation, lack of socioeconomic integration opportunities in Chiapas and Tabasco, where refugees and migrants, as I said, arrive, has created a need for internal relocation to other parts where country of the local economy offers better employment opportunities and access to basic services such as health, education, and housing. For this is so important that the government, such as this one in Mexico, can provide the refugees with the humanitarian transportation because they have very little money, but they have intellectual potential. They have competences that are important, and they can also help to develop the regions where they will be settling. So, well, maybe in the second part from Eliana, she will cover this. Monica, you're mute. Yes, I was speaking, but I was muted. Thank you so much, Doctor. Your presentation was so interesting, as you said, and as you mentioned. I will now give the floor to Deliana Garcia, who is the director of the International Projects and Emerging Issues of the Migrant Clinicians Network. So with no further ado, I give her the floor. Thank you, Monica. Next slide, please, Alma. Well, just as the doctor and everybody else before me has spoken a lot about migration, I wanted to mention that for MNC, the Migrant Clinicians Network, migration has always been the most important topic because it is the impact of migration in health, which has been our approach and focus all these years. We know that with migration, you lose the knowledge of your community, society, how things are handled, how to be able to get to know these people and then enroll them. All of this is lost, and every time they are moving, so what they learned is lost again because the system is different in the next place or whatever. So for us, this view about how migration impacts people's health is what has moved us in our projects and work in these last 35 years. Next. And so we also noticed that the amount of people asking to become refugees in the US has increased, and not only from the Americas, but also Afghanistan, Ukraine, all of them are coming with the idea of the situation where they are. It's not possible for them to remain and to actually make a living for their families. And for them, there's this movement as part of the government of the United States to help them actually get to the US. And so what we see for these people coming from the South, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, and everywhere else, is that there is a difference in the acceptance of the people as they actually arrive, who ask for asylum or to become refugees. But what we see at the border of Mexico and the US is that they arrive from everywhere in the world. If they arrive by land to the border, to the southern border, then they also get stuck in the same way, and they face a system who do not want to help them. They don't find it easy to get to the US. But also, we have had migrants from Mexico and Central America for many, many years. The braceros, as they were called in the 50s and 60s, were invited by the US to work during the time there was a need to have more workers. Then they were rejected, sent back to Mexico. So the US has a migration history that is very complicated because they open doors, they invite, they close the doors, they reject. So well. And so for people, this is typical. And this changes so much depending on what's going on in the world. So just by looking at the people of Venezuela living with these huge amounts, so many, 5,000 a day, then they try to arrive by water, by the ocean, and then they help people to do it also on land, and they are trying to get help. This is the only ones that actually do it on plane is Brazil, Nicaragua, and Cuba, because they believe these are people with the resources, and for them, the doors are opening up a little bit. And also, even when we are totally aware that they may have health problems, for us, it is land migration, the one that is our concern, the greatest concern. And so as the doctor was mentioning, they start in Venezuela. They go through Venezuela, get to Colombia, and from there, once they just leave and they want to find out how they will continue, Colombia, they can do right or wrong as usual, as the doctor was mentioning, the different countries do something, then they get fed and they change. But in order to leave Colombia, They have to go through the Darien area. Here is where health is really bad. Once they get to Honduras, is where they get stuck and they are being asked for money because the health problem can emerge here. And here I will want to stop for a moment, Alma, because I want to speak about the case that we received of a man from Venezuela who came alone, left his family, got to Colombia, and without knowing what was going to happen to him in the jungle, he did not prepare himself well. He had no money to eat. He didn't have enough water. He did not understand. He didn't have a lot of knowledge about being in the jungle. So he got to Honduras very dehydrated, and he was showing some signs of kidney failure. And so he was provided with support here, and he got some help for dialysis. And he received it, he got better, but he decided not to go back. He decided to move on. So he left Honduras, moved on all the way to Mexico. Next slide. Once he got to Mexico, he had very little time trying to decide where he was going to go in order to get to the United States. But in the meantime, while he was going through Mexico, he struggled so much to be able to receive dialysis. And so he got worse and worse. He finally made it to Juarez, which is to the west side, the arrow that you see on the left. Once he got to Juarez, he got to a shelter where he was getting support. But the only hospital that could provide dialysis was private. It was going to be a lot of money. So they were able to find a general hospital bed, a big hospital, and took him. But along all this time, the wife didn't know what he was going through. He finally got to talk to his wife, told her the whole story of what he went through, and guess what? The wife grabbed the 9-year-old little kid and started the journey and got all the way to Juarez. But as the little kid was here, she didn't have a space to leave him. She can only communicate with her husband through a social worker that was giving them the messages, coming and going. And so someone helped her to take care of the child so she can have access to the hospital, because in the hospital, the line of dialysis of his leg had been moved to his chest, and he was damaged on a lung. So this poor guy was so sick. I mean, we want to say thank you to the help he got, but for him, this was a tremendous danger. And knowing all this, the wife decided they were coming to the US, that she was going to ask for asylum and he was going to leave because of that. So she grabbed him, her son, and they crosswalked into El Paso. Once they got there, they found a shelter where they started getting help. They found a dialysis, they found a place to stay. So I got there to speak to the lady and tell her, I can help you with whatever we can, because I can tell you a little bit about our network help. But I had to tell her, but ma'am, that in the US, you won't be able to work. And she said, I work, because I will make a living for my family.
So when you go to New York, you can continue with the things that you're looking. And through MCN, we were able to find a hospital and where he could receive dialysis. And he is now in a waiting list for a kidney transplant. That's just one case. It hardly ever happens that way. but it is, oh, this is what happens with, is the good that the people who that work in this area. So for us, for MCN, when people need continuity in the care, then they enter, and one of the workers of the network take them and help them to arrive to the next place, and then connect them to the health services, so we know they are doing well. And what we see now, in the last 2 years, we have worked with about 3,000 pregnant women and 250 children that have critical needs of help. So what happens to people who are traveling and also arriving to the border, and the ones that succeed entering to the US, the situation is really not improving if they don't find someone who can support them as MCN. So we want to really thank the to our colleagues who are doing this work of the health network. If you know people who are arriving to your places and need also assistance to reach health services in another area, I hope that you can please get in touch with us and we can help them as much as possible. So I just wanted to share the story, and I want to give it back to you, Dr. Sanchez. Thank you. It's very interesting, and really they are very emblematic situations, but they need they need the attention that they need. Yes, it's one case, but there are so many cases like those. Thank you, Dal. Very, very interesting, your presentation. I really liked it. And those are the emblematic cases that you can be seen, you have seen. There are so many cases like this that really call to the reflection of what happens with the migrants with the chronic diseases, or in this case, a, a patient mm, with renal deficiencies. But there are many people who have not the same like as this gentleman. I will be talking about the possible responses to migration. It's possible. No, there is no one country that can solve all the challenges that faced by refugee and migrants. That's a political decision, and also the political will of each of the countries, but they maybe can do joint efforts to address the causes of displacement and the irregular migration, supporting the communities, the displaced communities, and providing access to fair and efficient asylum procedures. And so the Congress, the congresses in Latin America, especially in the northern triangle, should really look into it, so to have softer laws for the migrants, facilitating access to safe and regular routes as alternatives to hazardous journeys. We have already seen the risks, the journeys that the migrants are exposed, also to try to road accidents, or it also requires the collaboration of the countries to expand access to protection and asylum migration channels. The U.S. initiatives to offer resettlement to refugees is definitely a step in the right direction that can really offer real alternatives to people who risk their lives to find safety and solutions. Another possibility will be expanding the access to resettlement programs, and also labor mobility that can save lives and protect people from traffic and smuggling and other forms of violence. I think all countries that are in the path of the migrants should take into account these possible uh, solutions to migrations, and to give a more humanitarian treatment to migrants. That's my comments, and now I leave it for questions. That's it. Thank you so much to both of you. It has been incredible, the information that you have shared with us so far. So I would like to know if there are any questions, or if there are any questions in the chat. No, for the time being, there are no questions in the chat. I saw that there was a question. They were talking about the patronas, if they were covering the assistance with their own funds. Mm, I love the question. Yes, I was looking at some videos of the patronas, the women that assist the migrants. They're volunteers. I think they are 10, and they have support from from agencies that deal, or institutions that deal with food. Unfortunately, and they haven't lack of food. There have been also donors. There are about 800 packages that of meals that they cook every day. That's what I would say. I would love to see them and be with them one day, and also to give them some acknowledgement for the work that they do for migrants, because in some of the comments that we can rescue, and also videos that I was able to see of La Bestia, of the train. One gentleman commented that the train got stuck in a place for 3 days where there was absolutely nothing. So imagine that, 3 days without food, without water, until the engineer of the train decided to leave after 3 days. It's crazy. So this is a very important aid, and we need to support the Patronas Initiative, and I love the work that they do. We have another question. So it's asking about the if the UN, if the United Nations of the UN Agency for Migrations, if they are doing anything to help the migrants in the Darien, if they are offering any type of assistance. Do you have any? Do you know if there is any services that they are offering to the migrants, not just Venezuelan, but all the migrants that are going through the Darien? My research, what I was able to see is that there is just the there is a shelter, San Vicente, and it was amazing the support that it is given. The other is Doctors Without Borders. They are present in these areas, and I saw that there are some UNICEF units that have also presence, but I haven't seen other agencies, and I think it's important for them to join. The most dangerous section of the journey is the Darien, where they need food, water, where traffickers sell water, just $5 a small bottle, and the food. People are really have lack protections in this area. That should be the priority for support to the migrants. So those are the three groups that provide assistance to migrants. Alma, I can see that you have some comments and questions in the chat. Yes, from Panama, Yari Campos is telling us, thank you for the time that that allowed to these presentations, and also how the about broadening the understanding in these topics, and also a question on how could we support the families that are arriving that have children and who are going to schools. Where, how do you think they could be supported? And I had written as a response, look for the local shelters and the groups that are offering food, transportation, and housing and health, because most of those are the most of the programs that people are that we're seeing. The kids go to the school and then come back to a family that don't have a housing or don't have food. So yes, look at the children and think that there is not just the children, but also many needs for the family. Transportation, they cannot access health care, they cannot go to the store, they cannot go to look for access jobs. So yes, so access to the migrants who are arriving. There is another question from Mari Solorio. What is the reason why people are leaving Venezuela at such a at, at such a large rate? I have been doing research and I was in touch with Venezuelan migrants, and I asked them what make you make the decision to migrate, and the answer was there is a dictatorship and there is no food. That was a very simple, very short answer, but also very deep. The dictatorship and the hunger has really moved us to make the decision to leave the country. Maybe there are many other reasons, but that has been the most important one. And that's what we have seen. That's very, very strong. So another question, how how big do you think it is the political interest of the US to give asylum to people from Venezuela? Do you think it is because of their oil? We can say that there are many interests. Some are hidden. We can see throughout the years, but there are communities that are of Venezuelans in the US. Who have been here for many years, and they are demanding that please to receive their fellow Venezuelans. So we know that that's one of the reasons why that is moving the policies towards Venezuela. Another question is it's from Yari Campos that this shows how the grassroots organizations are really part of the response, and the community organized are key to in the answers. And Roberto Vasquez and says that in Tampa, Norca says that in Tampa, and there are many families from El Salvador, Honduras, and Venezuela, how they can be supported through the organizations. To be honest, the organizations that want to support the migrants are reaching the point where the resources they are running out of resources. They don't have the money that they need. Many people are arriving, so they are at a critical moment where they can hardly support the minimum number of people that need it. So we should look for those organizations, support them, and look at the way to connect to the people with resources, so they don't need so much support from the agencies that give that resources, that they can become independent, because that's what they are looking for, to continue their lives independently under their own power for the good of their family. And then the last question and comment for Dr. Sanchez. What do you think about the massive migration in Peru? And do you consider that the health situation is as bad as it is in Central America? So what do you think about what happens to Venezuelans in Peru? I have not much data on Peru, but what I can tell you is that in Peru, there are many, many Venezuelan migrants. And I can also tell you that the response from the Peruvian government through the migrants hasn't been one of the best. There is a lot in Peru, there is panhandling.
And the importance that should be given to the Venezuelan migrant in Peru is not provided. So I guess this has to do with the political will of each country, but this is very interesting information on why a lot of people migrated to Peru. It is important to know why a lot of people from Venezuela is in Peru. But I think it is an answer of political will for migrants. And Monica Esther wanted to make a comment. I don't know if she's there.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I was just dismissing in the Q&A. I was managing that, but thank you. Thank you, Del.
Okay, sorry, we're running out of time. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you so much for attending this seminar. This is the last one of the 3 we had. There's a lot of interest on the legal side of this topic. So I don't know, maybe we might bring another seminar, but we've got tried to fulfill your expectations, help you know that we have in our organization of the Health Network, as Diana already mentioned. We are a choice, we're an option for migrants that you are in touch with. If they have any needs, let us know, and we will gladly offer our services. I will also ask you to remain a little longer with us so that you fill out your evaluations. Next slide. It is so important for us that you fill out this evaluation, because based on your comments and the needs that you may express on them, we may know what kind of material to create or new opportunities of training to be able to respond to the needs that you have. So I kindly ask you to take 2-3 more minutes to fill out the evaluation, and I'll remain here with you until we get all these evaluations filled. And with all my heart, thank you so much, the panelists, the attendees of this series. Making this problem visible before the world is core, and you will have the opportunity to help in each and every one of the migrants that you find along your way.